The friend was devout Catholic and had a priest come to the house and bless it. Welcome to Daily Dose Reddit. What's the scariest experience you've had living in a haunted house? I moved into this old apartment building when I was just out of college. Just a one-bedroom, wood floors, paint peeling off the walls, old fixtures, with a long hallway leading to the kitchen and sitting room from the bedroom. The first night, I'm lying in bed and hear what I think must be the cabinets opening and closing. I hear the silverware, glassware clink together. I should also mention this apartment is in a somewhat sketchy area, so I bolt out of bed and rush into the kitchen, flick on the lights, and find nothing. Except one of the cabinets, that I knew I closed earlier, open wide. From then on, at night, there was often the sound of someone moving around the kitchen, opening and closing drawers, almost as if they were confused and bumping into things in the dark. This would happen about once or twice a week, and over time I got used to it. One night, I was fast asleep, and the noises woke me up. A loud bang, and then someone opening a drawer slowly, and then footsteps creaking on the floorboards in the kitchen, like they were going around and around in circles. Lying in bed, I said loudly, "I don't mind if you're here, but I'm trying to get some sleep. Could you please keep it down at night?" The footsteps stopped immediately, and I never heard the sounds again. I have a few stories, but these three bothered me the most. One night, before I wash dishes, I place my newborn in the center of my bed and make sure there is nothing around her. She can't move and is swaddled. I step out of the room into the kitchen that is right outside the bedroom to get started. After about 5 minutes I decide to go check on her. I walk into the room and she has a burp cloth on her face. There was no way for her to have accidentally grabbed onto the cloth as she was still swaddled and couldn't move. One night in the same bedroom, I'm laying down with my newborn and I close my eyes. I didn't fall asleep, I was just relaxing a little. Then, all of a sudden I feel a slap across my face. I felt the shape of hand specifically. I lived with my mom and I told her what happened. She told me she had felt the same thing as well, but she doesn't like bringing attention to things like that, so she ignored it and didn't say anything. And lastly, one night I am in the same room waiting for my boyfriend to get out of the shower. It's just the two of us home and there's nothing on. I am laying on my bed, reading a book, when all of a sudden I hear a giggle right outside my door. I thought it was my boyfriend, so I step into the kitchen and it's empty. I check the next room, which also leads to the bathroom, and it's empty. So I knock on the bathroom door, step inside to see my boyfriend shampooing. I ask him if he is messing with me and if he heard anything. He denies both, so at that point I start to freak out. I am scared, so I sit in the room right outside the bathroom and wait for him to finish, but I hear the giggle again from the kitchen, which is the next room over. So I know at that point it's definitely not him, and I run into the bathroom till he is done with his shower. It was really hard to live there. Washing dishes in the kitchen. To my immediate right was the door that went downstairs to our basement. It was late afternoon and I was home alone. I started to hear loud, slow, deliberate footsteps coming up the stairs. My immediate thought was someone broke in through a basement window. So instead of running like I should have, I grabbed a kitchen knife, thinking I was going to stop some dude from hurting myself or the family dog. The steps stopped right at the door and then it flung open. And just like some stupid scary movie, nothing was there. I was able to check the house after my heart rate went back to normal, and I made sure my pants weren't soiled. And found absolutely no explanation. There were multiple odd happenings in the house, but we always joked about it or ignored it. I didn't tell anyone because my siblings were younger and my parents would say it was nothing or an imagination run wild. Funnily enough, my brother had the same thing happen to him several years later. I was shocked when he told me, and he was relieved when I told him I had the same experience. So not sure what to make of it. I theorize that if it is a ghost, spirit or whatever, it's just bored and wanted some attention or fun. The idea of an actual person breaking into the house still terrifies me more. Waking up to my bedside table halfway across the room, and when I went downstairs after discovering it, the first thing my roommate said to me was, "Did you hear the footsteps last night?" Apparently she'd heard someone climb the stairs shortly after me, walk into my room, and then stop completely. Lasted less than a year in that house. I lived in a house with a murder-suicide for a while going through college. The house was eerie to begin with, but the blood stain locked into the wood floor was really a nice addition to the ambiance. Anyway, I had an ex-girlfriend who would dream of horrifying things there. As in, yelling, breathing, sweating and feeling the dreams happen. She one time dreamed of a man coming right up the stairs and stabbing her repeatedly in the stomach. I was next to her when I was watching her and couldn't wake her up for a good 10 minutes and I was very much shaking her. Nothing in that era of my life was okay. Her dreams went back to normal once we moved out. I lived in an old building, one of the oldest in the tiny town that was still standing. It had a creepy old service elevator in the back that supposedly was used to move bodies when the building was originally a funeral home and mortuary. The place was effed up. No one else lived in the building, but you could hear all sorts of weird noises. Voices, strange laughter. I would see shadows of people and think my GF had come home and brought a friend over, and I'd look around and there would be no one there, and then the shadows were gone. I would wake up feeling like someone was in the room with me and feel someone breathing on my skin. Whatever was going on, it would drive our cats crazy. They would start howling and running around and scratching all the walls. So, I used to live in a really old house in Tuscany, right in the middle of the countryside. My parents bought it for almost nothing. It was the late 80s, and remodeled it all by themselves. There was no water nor electricity. We lived there until I was 7 and then we moved to the town nearby, so my memories are kinda foggy, but once I told my parents that on a school trip I tried using a Ouija board and they got upset, so they told me that our old house was pretty haunted. The common stuff was things moving and disappearing. My parents' bedroom was on the 2nd floor, and I remember them ever sleeping in it. The common excuse was that in winter it was too cold, and during summer way too hot. The truth is that the bedroom was the most haunted room. One night my father woke up to see something sitting at the end of the bed. There was always a strange feeling in that particular room, and definitely not a nice feeling. Another episode happened to my mother. I'm the 3rd child. My brother and sister are twins and are older than me. My mother used to place them one by one on the lowest stairs going up to the bedrooms to pick them up easily at the same time. Twins are difficult. One time she was doing that, and as soon as she placed my brother on the stair, something pulled him and threw him like a bullet. Good thing my mother had good reflexes and she caught him just in time. I still miss that house very much. Maybe not the house, but the feeling of living in the countryside. What's certain is that whatever lived in that house with us was not nice, to say the least. The scariest thing that happened in my house happened to me when I was a child. I was 12-ish. My sister and I would be terrorized some evenings in our room by knocks, bangs, pokes and growls. The physical contact is what scared me the most and still does to this day. One evening we had some knocks and I went in to tell my mother it had started up again. We all knew about what was happening and were trying to learn to live with it. She came into our room and told it to go away, leave us alone, etc. And then left us to try and sleep. As soon as she left the room, I heard a scratching sound and felt pain and burning on my wrist and up my arm. I had been scratched pretty badly by thin air. Mom was mortified. I was scared out of my mind. We moved out of that room the day after, as that was where the majority of stuff went on. I was never physically harmed again, but the bumps, growls and oddities continue in that house to this day. My mom's close friend lived in a locally notorious, haunted house. It was downtown and turn of the century. It was built by a local doctor who killed his wife then shot himself. Anyways, the house has always had an odd reputation. The guy had it built with a bunch of secret passages and doors and such. It's owned by an older guy now who runs a creepy antique shop out of it. When my mother's friend lived there, she had quite a few odd things happen. Some of them could probably be dismissed as old house, weird sounds, and poor old wiring issues. A lot of the house's lights and the TV would randomly turn on. Some of them were quite strange, however. On a few occasions she found handprints that were some sort of weird black sludge all over her drapes. She was the only one who lived there. The house has one of those old-timey mini balconies that opens from the master bedroom. She walked into the room one night and saw a black silhouette standing there. That spot is supposedly where the doctor shot his wife. The friend was devout Catholic and had a priest come to the house and bless it. Apparently all the weird happenings stopped after that. There may have been more that happened after that, but it's been years ago now, and her friend passed away a few years after it all happened. Christmas, 2 years ago. I had the house decorated with little figurines of snowmen, gingerbread men, etc. My husband and I were gone a whole Sunday to his parents' house. We locked the deadbolts, windows were locked, no one else had a key. We get back later that evening. I'm the first through the door, and I rush to go pee. As I'm peeing, I look towards the sink. I notice that the 2 snowmen I'd placed there were turned backwards. I leave the bathroom, and inspect the house. Every single Christmas figurine had been turned backwards, throughout the house. I had taken a pic of my tree to show my mill. I am anal about my tree. I check it out to make sure it's okay. It is, but something seems off. I pull up the pic I took before I left. The ornaments had been switched around. I already had my husband checking for signs of a break-in. There were none. It seemed perfectly designed to disturb me. I hate this house. 2 of my roommates are convinced our house is haunted. I'm still pretty skeptical though. It's a 1-story house, but it's built on a hill, so the back of the house is almost 2 stories, whereas the front is 1, since the hill slopes down. One side of the house has all the bedrooms, and the roommate who sleeps in the room closest to the front says he had been woken up by banging noises on the window right next to his bed. I chucked it off to someone banging on the window since it is close to the ground, or a branch from a bush. We have had issues with drunks mistaking our house for theirs and trying to get in, and there are trees right next to the window, so both are plausible explanations. Then my second roommate says she is hearing banging noises on her windows as well, but she's farther back from the front of the house. The windows in her room are about 8 feet off the ground, and there are no branches or plants near them, just our neighbor's driveway. So if it was a person trying to get in, they chose literally the most out of the way and difficult entrance. Especially considering there are 2 other entrances to the house that are doors, one of which has a window next to it. Maybe the banging has something to do with the temperature difference inside the house versus outside, causing the windows to make the noise. Except the original roommate who complained about the banging has French doors to his room. He has been complaining that the banging sounds like it is now coming from the French doors, which are inside the house completely and shouldn't be affected by outside temperatures. After this, we began to notice that doors would be left open when we thought we had them closed, and stuff ends up in weird places or randomly goes missing. I'm still not convinced personally, since 4 people live there and the house is almost 100 years old, so strange stuff is bound to happen. I personally like to refer to the hypothetical ghost as DJ Ghost, since I jokingly requested a song from a playlist and it happened to play it next. Currently half of the people who live there are scared shitless, while the other half keep making DJ Ghost jokes. So we'll see, I guess. Not my house, but my best friend's condo is apparently open season for spiritual activities. Not to mention, her old work had some creepy demon, which scares me to no end. Her old work was this alternative medicine place, and all the rooms were connected by a very long and winding hallway with a locked back door. Which is where it hung out. During the day was fine, but once sunset rolled around it would start to make noises. It wouldn't go to a certain place, and never went into the room that was used for Reiki. She told me that once you got to a certain place in the hallway, it would come up and start following you, but wouldn't go into the bathroom with you. Not as much as a douchebag as it could have been. Apparently, it was a very tall, very dark entity that would crouch down and pretend it was a little girl. Everyone who believed in that stuff was scared shitless of it, and I guess it was strong enough to physically harm you. She has a lot of experience with entities and demons, has even exorcised a few, but even that scared the crap out of her. Lived in a beyond haunted house. Had a little girl that would want to play with me multiple times, and a teenage boy who liked the hallway. The scariest things that ever happened to me though was in the middle of the night. I heard footsteps, so I go upstairs and into my doorway. I was in bed and purposely slept face towards the wall for mainly these reasons. Anyway, I heard something walk into my room, so I turned over and saw 3 bony fingers with torn up clothes in front of my desk. Its fingers were doing the "come here" motion, so I booked it to my parents' room and told my mom. We walked back to the hallway, heard a gasp when my mom flicked on the light, and then something grabbed her shoulder. I have so many other stories from that house, but that one was beyond the worst. When I was little, I walked into a bathroom to see a blinding white flash, turned and immediately ran away. My dad caught me and started yelling at me, wondering where I had been for the last 2 hours. Strongly disbelieve it was aliens. I vaguely have memories of a floating girl with dark hair and white clothes talking to me, but that's it. This was in broad daylight. Other times, it was just your typical shenanigans. Hearing voices calling your name, thinking a family member is in a certain room and you can swear the lights are on, but when you round the corner the room is dark and empty, feeling something play with my hair, hearing footsteps when no one is home. That kind of thing. My husband works nights, so I'm alone Monday through Friday. So I'm in the bathroom, pinning my hair up, when I hear a huge slap. On the side of the bathtub. I power walk out of the bathroom, past my kitchen to get to my living room. As I walk past the kitchen, another huge slap, this time on the side of the fridge. I continue power walking to the living room, and huddle up with my dog on the couch. He's shaking, and I feel an intense sense of fear, and the need to GTFO. But, we only have one car, and I had no one close by to come get me. So I called a friend, and stood outside as long as I could. It was winter. I reluctantly come back in, and resume sitting on the couch. I begin to hear knocking in the corner behind my couch. I'm trying my best not to show fear, but I'm terrified. I felt like the living room and adjacent laundry room were safe, and I had to pee, and so I pityingly pissed in a cup in the laundry room. I leave the door open, and as I'm peeing, I begin to hear something insane. It sounds like something with hooves is galloping down the hall. I've never whimpered out of fear before, but I did then. I finished and just crawled back to the couch and waited for my husband to get home. I dealt with this from 7 to 11:30 at night. It was awful. I grew up in a house that was built by family in the late 1700s in New England. I experienced a lot of strange things there, mostly harmless. Most of my family that grew up there have experiences as well. I will share a few. One day when I was around 16, I was standing in the kitchen having a mundane conversation with my mother, when I saw feet at the bottom of the stairs kinda out of the corner of my eye. Thinking it was my brother messing with me, I said knock it off, then turned and there was no one there. My mom told me my brother wasn't even home, we were the only 2 people home. Freaked us both out. Another time my parents bought a new answering machine, and about 3 or 4 days after setting it up my mother starts yelling from the kitchen, so I went out to find out what was up. She points at the answering machine and it is rewinding and then stopping and rewinding again. I take a closer look and could physically see the button being pushed down and released all on its own. This one I heard secondhand. One day the family was having a get-together and partying, barbecuing outside. Everyone is outside having a blast. One of my uncle's friends goes in the house and hears a noise upstairs, stands at the bottom and yells up thinking it was one of my uncles. Suddenly a shoe flies down the stairs and hits him in the face hard. He runs outside with a nosebleed, obviously upset. My dad goes inside to find out who was there, can't find anyone in the house. There are so many more, but it would be a book, so I will leave you with that. I never full-on lived in this house, but I spent a very large portion of my childhood there. When I was about 8 years old, my grandparents went up to Canada to go gamble for a few days, so my mom and I were over there every day, checking the mail and whatnot. Now, I'd had some bizarre shit happen in this house prior to this, but this story is the only time it got physical. When we walked in, I ran straight upstairs to where all my toys that I had were while my mom was downstairs checking mail, etc. So I'm playing with my toys and I heard a door close a couple rooms over. Didn't think much of it, but I knew somewhere in my mind that my mom wasn't upstairs and we were the only ones there. But I was 8, so my concern was toys. Not sure how much time passed, couldn't have been more than a few minutes. My mom yells for me from the bottom of the stairs. I ran to the top of the stairs and began arguing with her about leaving because, ya know, toys. I start going into full-blown tantrum mode when I see a look of terror in my mom's face. I later found out that it was because she saw it behind me. Next thing I know, I'm tumbling down the stairs after having been shoved with a considerable amount of force. My mom basically catches me and we take off out the door. Locked it up, went on our way. We've only talked about it a couple times, but we both still remember it vividly. I grew up in a haunted house and have had many experiences outside of the house as well. My story for my childhood home comes from the mid-200s, when I was in my early 20s. I was very sick that Christmas, a viral infection which kept me in bed. I had lurched out of bed and slithered down the stairs for Christmas Day, still feeling wretched but wanting to be present because G-Mom was spending the holiday with us. We did presents and breakfast and I crawled back to my bed, armed with a plastic grocery bag and a roll of toilet paper, as my face was running unpleasantly. A few days after Christmas, I was still in bed suffering. It was night time, and I was struggling to sleep because of congestion. I had my plastic grocery bag hanging from the bedpost so I could easily deposit the dozens of tissues, i.e. toilet paper, I was using for my running eyes and nose. I had turned out the light. That's when I heard the shuffling across the floor. My bedroom had a wood floor. In the dark, I heard the shuffling of feet dragging closer to the head of my bed. I had grown up in this house experiencing the paranormal, 20 years of it, but nothing so close as this. I was wide awake, not on any medication, and I froze in bed. I silently willed it away, but it drew closer. For reference, my bed was against a wall. My right side and head were flush against the wall. My left side and the foot of the bed were open to the room. My tissue bag was hanging from the bed's head post on the left, as I laid on my back. The shuffling came closer. I was in a cold sweat, unable to move, willing it to go away when the plastic bag next to my head violently crinkled, like someone was scrunching it in their hands. I couldn't breathe because of fear, but managed to turn on the desk lamp I had clipped to my headboard. There was nothing there. I was scared and kept the light on for an hour or so before I fell asleep. The light bothered me and I shut it off. As soon as I did so, I heard breathing below the foot of my bed. I held my breath. The breathing continued. By this point, I was so exhausted from being sick and scared that I passed out, still listening to something watching me and breathing heavily at the foot of my bed. I was in my bedroom listening to my parents arguing upstairs. I was angry. It seemed like they never stopped arguing at the time, and then all of a sudden the anger turned into this overwhelming terror. I just knew there was something horrifying in the room with me, so I ran. Or at least tried to. I didn't make it more than a couple steps before I saw a black shadow out of the corner of my eye, then felt something grab a handful of my hair. Since I was running, my head was yanked backwards and I was looking up at the ceiling. It only stopped me for a moment before I started running again, felt like I was running for my life. I didn't think I could make it out of the room fast enough, so I ran to my bed, and sat with my back against the wall so nothing could sneak up behind me. I don't know how long I sat there before I worked up the courage to leave the room. I just remember trying to keep my eyes on the whole room at once, including the wall above me, waiting for something to attack me again. It never did. Thank you so much for watching.